Well, good morning and welcome. We want to welcome all of you who are tuning in and be watching this series on homelessness in Monterey County, San Benito County. This is an incredibly important topic right now, and we wanted to both welcome you into the conversation, but invite you to learn and to participate and be wholly engaged in this important issue. So, this is a fun seminar series. We're going to be having probably 6 or 7 different segments. We'll have guests like we have today, who are experts in their fields of touching homelessness and families and kids. Hopefully, again, you'll ask lots of questions. We plan to make those available as well and answer those questions over time and get those published, again, so we can engage the community as much as possible. But on behalf of Community Homeless Solutions, which is the agency that both Cheryl Camany, that you'll meet in a minute, and I sit on their board and have for some time, we want to welcome you in. Community Homeless Solutions is a wonderful agency. It's been around for about 40 years. In fact, we just celebrated our birthday last year of having been in existence. But Community Homeless Solutions is the largest homeless housing and service agency to about 300 people in 5 shelters, several transitional housing units, respite care, street outreach, a bunch of different areas. And very proud of that, but it's also very challenging because we get asked to do a lot, which is fun. So I wanted today, though, to let you know that, and you'll see a slide here of the different topics that we want to cover over the next probably 6 months is what we project on this. But we'll be talking about housing. We'll be talking about shelters and domestic violence. We'll be talking about youth homelessness specifically. We'll be talking about ways you could become involved in the community. And boy, I know a lot of people ask me, how can I get more engaged? Well, here's your chance. So we're going to get you there. So today we have 2 wonderful guests with us. We have Cheryl Camany and Donna Smith. They work with students and youth homeless day in, day out. Cheryl Camany has been serving on the board with me for a long time. I've got to get these titles right because you'll see these titles are longer than actually the whole name of the county. But so Cheryl is the Family Resource Center Homeless Liaison for the Salinas City Elementary School District. How's that, Cheryl? Did I do that right?
Correct.
Amen.
Correct.
And Donna Smith is a wonderful lady who's a program coordinator and she's a homeless services for children and youth with the Monterey County Office of Education. So she has the whole county in mind. Cheryl works within a district but serves multiple people in that role. So Cheryl has worked over the Family Resource Center for years. She oversees all the resourcing and help for homeless families in that district. So she spends a lot of time day in, day out serving people. She's a consummate fundraiser. In fact, watch your wallet if any of you are. She'll come get that $20 that she got left. So, but no, she's terrific at that. And Donna, boy, she's actually I follow in Donna's wake. We don't know each other a lot personally, but I get to see all the results 2 days later when Donna's been there because she's dropped off backpacks or food, or she's just terrific. So it's actually a joy to be with her in person on this interview. But so welcome to both of you. You guys are terrific, and we look forward to your insights on this whole homeless youth topic that we're going to be talking about today. So a couple just really quick logistical things, if I may. First, each episode will be taped. It'll be posted on the Community Homeless Solutions website and potentially on the Coalition website too. We will coordinate and make sure we get it on there if it works. So, but we set up a special seminar page. The website address is on the slide that you'll see in a moment. And you can go in there after each episode, click on there at your leisure and watch the taping together. As we get questions coming in, either through chat or through, we have an email address here, info@communityhomelesssolutions.org, where you can email in questions. And I'll go back to Donna and Cheryl, and we'll answer questions as they come up and put those in a printed format so everyone again has those. So look for those. Again, this is your invitation to get engaged. So finally, if you need to use the restroom during the seminar, I can't help you, so don't bother. So without further ado, if we may, we're going to jump into this important topic about youth homelessness. So ladies, thank you again for being here. And I know your schedules are as crazy as mine these days, but you've put a lot of time into this, so thank you for that. And to start, if I could turn, Donna, maybe to you, tell us what's the actual definition of homelessness, especially when it comes to youth homelessness, and what are the variations in those definitions that we should pay attention to?
So, yes, there are some variations. And so when we talk about children and youth, we're referring to an act that went into effect in 1987, and it's called the McKinneyVento Homeless Assistance Act. And basically, that act provides protections for children and youth, including preschool, guaranteeing rights to participate and enroll in school, receive services that they need. It also tells us we need to, as a school district, to remove any barriers that would get in the way of a child being successful in school. And we'll go into that, what barriers mean, a little bit later on. But the act is really to protect our students and get them enrolled in school. So within that act, how do children and youth qualify under McKinneyVento for schools? And basically, any child or youth who lacks a fixed, regular, or adequate nighttime residence would qualify for these protections under McKinneyVento. So these could be kids that are, doubled up with another family. Families doubled up together. Maybe one family holds the lease on the apartment or house, and then the families experiencing homelessness would be living in one room or one part of the house. These are kids that live in encampments, in cars, trailers that aren't designed to be a permanent type of situation. So what other types, Cheryl?
The list is pretty extensive, but if motels, hotels, campsites, living on the street, renting a room, which also could include a closet, a garage, renting a living room, or even a kitchen type of thing, RVs, and public spaces that are not normally designed for human inhabitants,
Right.
Bus or train stations, and substandard housing. Most folks forget about this, that you could have a family living all by themselves in a little apartment, yet there's no water or no heat, no electricity, there's mold or infestation of either lice, cockroaches, other rodents, etc. But that is definitely inadequate and not designed usually for human inhabitants.
Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's jump to the next question about the numbers. Boy, we've heard some press releases about huge numbers
Yes.
of homeless youth we have in Monterey County, and the percentage of students that are homeless in our school district, et cetera, et cetera. Tell us a little bit about, and this again is according to the McKinney-Vento definition, right? How many homeless youth have been identified in Monterey County, and what do those numbers look like?
So every district at the beginning of the year, and sometimes midway through the year as well, give out what we call a student residency questionnaire. And this is for the parents to fill out on where they live. Once that questionnaire is filled out, the liaison for each district will go ahead and look at those numbers and put them into a database called CalPads. And then at the end of the year, I get all those numbers and put them together on a spreadsheet like this, so I'm able to see how many students are considered homeless for every single district and charter school.
So you got a PhD in math, right?
No.
But you can run spreadsheets.
Yes, I do have one though in educational organization.
There you go. So you're ready.
Anyway, so last year, from our counts last year, we had 9,905 infant through seniors in high school.
Holy smokes.
Students that were considered or experiencing homelessness. And so then we did a breakdown of where these students with their families, or sometimes not, are actually living. So 224 were in shelters.
Well, okay.
Okay, throughout the
Probably
county.
probably in our shelter. Right?
Mostly in your shelters, yes, mostly in your shelters. 259 were in hotels and motels. And then 8,732 were doubled up with another family. So that's really the majority of our homeless population. And these are families living with other families, maybe multiple families,
Sure.
but really restricted as far as where they can move throughout the house, or how much
where they can do
participation,
homework,
where they can do
eat.
homework is a very big issue. So, and then 365 were unsheltered. So they could have been living in the encampments, in their car.
Well, now, continuing on a little bit further with those numbers, one of the things we wanted to talk about was the cause of homelessness, what's causing some of these situations. In fact, Monterey County unfortunately has a dubious honor that I think there's all sorts of press releases about this number of 9,000 plus you've talked about of homeless youth. A lot of people don't know why. Why is this happening? What does it mean? And we know our two biggest industries in the county are ag and hospitality. Interesting enough, those often have both the lowest wages in a county that has some of the highest housing costs in all of California. So we can see right away we're going to have issues, right? And that's certainly a cause we know about. But there's a whole host of others that are tied to that. So Cheryl, why don't you start us off and give us some of those causes of homelessness that you're experiencing? And it's obviously not just the youth, it's the families too, and the family systems they're tied to. But what are some of the chief causes and that you're dealing with day in day?
There are a variety of reasons why our families are experiencing homelessness, and I'll share a few, and then Donna will continue as well.
Perfect.
But obviously, the loss of a job, okay, and then lack of jobs that pay a living wage, especially for our Monterey County high expenses that in order to be able to rent.
In fact, I think that just came out. We had to have families earning at least $55,000 or more to be able to afford a typical 2-bedroom apartment in Salinas.
Yes, yes, exactly. And then that leads to loss of affordable housing, obviously. And then we have some families that are experiencing domestic violence, both the female and the males, whether mom or dad. And some of our children are witnessing that, but they're fleeing and out of safety. Mental illness, addiction such as drug and alcohol, and occasionally even gaming or going to the casinos, so that can be another addiction, and divorce. And
so Cheryl, let me just if I can just quickly ask you about mental health and drug and alcohol. Everyone who doesn't know homeless thinks that everyone on the street is either mentally ill and or drinking and taking drugs 100% of the time. Tell me, what's the reality of that?
From my experiences and working face-to-face with our homeless families as they come into our Family Resource Center, it's actually a pretty small percentage. And, maybe there was the incarceration or they were in prison and they're now getting out and trying to work the system and reunite with their families, which can lead to homelessness as well. That's another factor. Or they might have been through a rehabilitation center, and so they've left the addiction behind, but there's still all the navigation and the lack of support in working with that. But very few actually have an addiction. Mental health, there's some mental health, but a smaller percentage as well. And most of the families that I work with are really reaching out to our nonprofits, our agencies in the county that can assist them.
I saw actually one of these self-reported stats from the survey that about 60 to 70% of our homeless are depressed. But wouldn't you be if you were on the street for 1 month, maybe one day, let alone 6 months or whatever? So, and sometimes that gets thrown in that mental health bucket in a way that's probably not descriptive of if people were settled and housed and everything else, that would quickly disappear. But that's a helpful observation, because I think it's a misperception out there.
And then one other aspect is we forget about our veterans that possibly could be experiencing PTSD or other trauma that they've experienced, especially with our gangs. Our children and our families are experiencing or witnessing murders, and then having to live through that. But yet they're expected to go to work the next day. They're expected to go to school and to continue on with doing their homework, where we forget that these families a lot of the time need counseling, which may or may not be available.
Yeah, and mentoring and some help.
Exactly.
Now we see this with the prison population. We work a fair amount with them on trying to get them back on their feet. They get $200 in a bus ticket when they leave prison.
Yes.
And expected to live, and of course they've already burned all their family relationships probably and everything else. So is it any wonder they're back in prison in 3 years on average, 65% of the time? So that does impact families too. So Donna, you want to pick up on the list from there?
Okay. Things we take into account is how damaging it is to have a physical illness or injury where you lose your job, and then you lose your health benefits, And so, or maybe you have a child who gets very, very ill and their treatments are incredibly expensive. And so then you can lose your housing because of that. And there's a decline in public assistance at time. It ebbs and flows. Sometimes we have more, sometimes we have less.
Sure.
For our younger students, we call them our unaccompanied youth. They experience homelessness either because they've been kicked out of their house, or they're fleeing domestic violence, or they're living in a situation that's just not working for them. And we want to keep those kids in school. So under McKinneyVento, of course we do, and we support them, but they also become homeless because of their poor family relationships.
Yep.
And so that's significant. We have about 48 unaccompanied youth this school year that we've accounted for so
48.
far in some of our high schools. Eviction and foreclosure, of course, and then the skyrocketing costs of childcare.
Oh, yeah. Boy, that's a...
Can play into
Well,
that.
we're going to have a series on the impacts of COVID later,
Yeah.
too, but people not being able to go back to work versus going back to work and finding childcare and all that.
Exactly.
It's just like a
It's
huge
It's a
issue
whole
right
issue.
now. So, yeah.
And then, of course, natural disasters. So we've had, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's been a natural disaster here in Monterey County. Sometimes families move here from other places due to a natural disaster. And I know that, Cheryl, you've experienced some families, right, that
I
came
have.
from Hurricane
Hurricane
Katrina.
And then our flood in, it was either 95, 98. There's a lot of families that got flooded out and lost their homes, and then therefore had to either move into motels or hotels, or become doubled and tripled up.
Sure.
And we did have some families move onto the peninsula from was it the Carr Fire?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
From up
that's true.
By Chico, yeah.
Like,
That's true.
Yeah,
That's true.
yeah.
Paradise, right?
Yep.
And we did have some families move here and were homeless.
So super, we talked about a number of the causes from homelessness, and I'm sure there's even a couple more we didn't talk about, but they're multifaceted, of course, and different for every family. Maybe we could focus now on what are some of the primary needs. So if people are experiencing this homelessness, how are we meeting their needs? Cheryl, you run the Family Resource Center for the school district. You see this day in, day out. What are the needs people have?
So needs in addition to stable housing,
Yes,
correct?
so it's a given, right?
Correct, yes. So one thing that I really see is our families don't know what they don't know. And it's really interesting because they're not necessarily aware of the variety of agencies out there and the services that can be provided. And I think they're so in such in a state of chaos and turmoil and worried about the kids going to school and can I pay this bill or that bill, and can I get the kids to the school on time or get them on the bus, and then maybe we don't have enough to feed them breakfast, and yet we've missed the breakfast time at school. I mean, you add all of that, and they didn't do their homework last night because the utility bill was shut off, or the clothes didn't get clean because I didn't have enough money to go to the laundromat. If you add all of that into the conundrum of what these folks are experiencing, and yet our families, our parents, are trying to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and kind of act like it's okay, we'll get through this, and give encouragement and love and optimism to their children. But yet when they put their head on their pillow, if they have one, that's when our adults are breaking down. So some of the needs, to answer your question, are...
Well, I just think, as you went down that checklist, I was saying, I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to, how many of those things do we take for granted day in, day out, that these are very real situations they're facing day in, day out. So thanks, keep going.
So which allude to some of their needs. They need information and referral to community resources and how to navigate through those systems.
Which we make it as complicated as possible.
It's pretty complicated.
Yes.
Yeah.
And each agency might have their own set of parameters and
the funding sources.
exactly, and qualifications that have to be met.
Yeah.
So childcare, which you alluded to earlier, is a huge issue. Of if you have 3 or 4 children, you're a single parent and been divorced, or let's say the spouse is disabled, and maybe unable to do the childcare, so you might be the only person in the family unit that can go out and get a job. But then does childcare, is it worth doing it if you have 2 or 3 children that need childcare that are below the age of being able to be into school?
So are you even making enough money to pay for your child
Childcare, right?
Exactly. And then transportation can be a huge issue. They may or may not have transportation. They may be out of the boundaries of where transportation is provided. Or with McKinneyVento, if a child needs transportation, if they're not within the walking distance, we can provide that, but you still have to orchestrate where the pickup and the drop off, and there has to be an adult on each end of that, so that can be an issue. They may not have backpacks or school supplies. McKinneyVento liaisons, or even county offices of ed are supposed to provide that if it's needed, or even uniforms. That's another issue.
United Way and Rotary clubs and
Exactly.
churches, fortunately, jump in on the backpack
Right.
drive
That's
each year.
right. That's right.
It's gonna be interesting to see what kind of backpacks they need this year with distance learning.
Okay.
The needs
still-
have changed a little.
they will.
I guess they still have some basic supplies, but it's
No, they do. The
They do,
teachers
yeah.
are all saying that, because I called a couple teachers, that a lot of them will be doing packets. There'll be pencil paper, so to speak, tasks that have to be done and then uploaded. It's not all going to be electronic, especially if you're talking about 3-year-old Head Start, your preschoolers, or even your special ed children too.
We're gonna have the most tech savvy agricultural force in the world. Huh?
We are.
And then also, a lot of times they might need help with, how do I even enroll? How do we get our kids enrolled? What's the process? And it may start at the district office during the summer for enrollment, but after a certain date, they have to go back to the schools. And what documents will I need? And with McKinneyVento, you don't have to bring in a utility bill or proof of residency of where you're living. So the educational aspect of educating your staff in this school district is the responsibility of the liaison to make sure they understand the laws too about immediate enrollment.
Yeah.
So enrolling
And-
is one issue too.
And understanding all the available resources and agencies, I mean, that takes time, even as a staff person. Can you imagine if you have turnover in staff on occasion, that all this institutional knowledge goes out the window? I mean, I know how complicated our agency is for board members to learn. It's a year of probably time, extended learning how it runs. But I can imagine that's the same with with your staff. So Donna, tell us where most of our kids are, homeless kids by McKinneyVento are located in terms of school district geography, and is that flipped a little bit? Has it changed
Throughout
over
the county.
years?
It ebbs and flows, but definitely. So last year, and even when I talk about year, I mean school year, right?
Fiscal year.
Not fiscal year, school year. The majority of our 9,000 plus homeless students really lived in Salinas. And that would include Salinas City Elementary School District and the LSL Union School District. So that was the largest portion between those two districts. The MPUSD, Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, this year has 500 more students than they did last year. So that's our second largest area of families, children experiencing homelessness. North Monterey County has been higher in the past, but due to some new housing efforts over there, their numbers have decreased as far as their homeless families, which is good news.
Very encouraging.
So that was another large area. And then our South County areas, especially in Greenfield, have grown a lot this year in their homeless students. So
Interesting.
it's a little bit of pockets everywhere.
Yeah. Closing thoughts is I just want to say we hope you've enjoyed this first in a series of many educational opportunities. That you'll join us for future webinars. We'll be doing these approximately monthly. We may do them more frequently, simply because the need and the issues are there, and as people are available, which is the hard part to find now because everyone's so wrapped up in this from the COVID challenges as well. But I'd like to just challenge the audience, the listening audience, to do what they've suggested. Go deeper, learn, be a good learner, be a good listener, ask great questions. If you'll ask yourself, how can I personally and corporately be more involved in this issue, even at a minute level? That would be wonderful. And please pray for those that were talked about today, if you're inclined to do so, for the healing, for the restoration of these lives that are so important, caught in this cycle. And it's sometimes it's a cycle of poverty as well that accompanies it, that certainly drives it, addictions, etc. So,
Yeah.
but we look forward to seeing you in our next seminar. And again, thank you, ladies, so much.
You're
It's been
welcome.
an absolute
You're welcome.
joy, and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.